the pound buying $1.26 and €1.13. The weather, rain becoming mainly confined to the north and west of England tonight, with more showers heading into Wales and the south towards dawn. Clearer across Scotland and Northern Ireland with a low of 3. Tomorrow, sunshine and downpours for most, a high of 20 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. Well, it was yesterday that I played you that clip from Jo Brand, which had appeared on a Radio 4 comedy show in which she'd said that rather than showing milkshakes over certain prominent politicians who it was easy to hate, perhaps people should throw battery acid. And, of course, the fact she said a politician that's come to the fore recently, well, it was pretty clearly aimed at me. She said it was supposed to be a joke. I have to say today there has been considerable outrage, including the Prime Minister, who's spoken out and said politicians should be able to go about their work and campaign without harassment, intimidation or abuse. And in the course of the last hour, we learn that the Metropolitan Police are indeed following up a series of complaints that have been made, and they are looking into those allegations. It's currently being assessed. There are no arrests and inquiries are ongoing. And tonight, I want to ask you, is it right that the police investigate these comments, or was it just humour? Was it just an exercise in free speech? And my argument, very strongly, is that free speech does have its limits. An incitement to violence, incitement to harm against the person is beyond the realms of what is acceptable. I also believe that when it comes to humour, there are some things that simply are not funny. There is no funny side to it whatsoever, and I do include acid attacks, this horrendous new crime that has hit our streets in the last few years. I think this is way beyond a joke. And I'm going to start tonight by talking to somebody who has been the victim of an acid attack. And it's Joe Davis. He's 25 years old. He suffered from an acid attack in Slough. Joe, good evening, and thank you for coming on to me with me on LBC.
Hi, good evening.
Joe, you were attacked. You were left burnt and blistered as a result of an acid attack.
Yes, that's correct.
How long ago did this happen to you?
This would be 2 years next month.
Right, and how much are you still suffering from the effects of that?
So on a day-to-day basis, the suffering will never stop.
Mm. When you heard Jo Brand make these comments yesterday, which were aimed pretty fairly and squarely at me, but that's by the by, the fact is she chose to sort of make a joke saying that milkshake should actually be battery acid. How do you react to that?
I just find the comment absolutely sickening. From what she said, that if you look into what it's actually done to victims of acid attacks and left with permanent scarring, that's not just obviously the physical scars, but the emotional and psychological scarring it causes as well. I just think it's horrendous.
Did her talking about it sort of, bring this whole thing back to you, or do you live with it every day anyway?
I live with it every day anyway, but for her to make a comment like that and being the public figure that she is, and the amount of people that follow her and listen to her live, it just promotes that throwing any sort of acid or throwing anything over someone is acceptable when it's not.
No, absolutely. Do you have a message for Jo Brand on the BBC who played this clip?
I've said to the Mirror, and I'll say it to you as well, I would like for myself to be in a meeting with her, with other acid attack victims, to see if she can make a mockery in front of our faces.
No, I agree. And do you think, as a result of all of this, Joe, that it's right that the Metropolitan Police do look at what she said yesterday?
100%. Today alone, I've been looking at the laws and legislation about what you can and can't say. She, as far as I'm aware, she's broken 2 laws already.
Okay, Joe, listen, thank you. Been very brave coming on this show, talking about the horrendous attack that happened to you, and you've made your views very clear. Thank you very much indeed for coming on. Well, that's Joe Davis, 25 years old, has been through the horrors of an acid attack, and as he said, he's living with it every single day. His view is that she's broken a couple of laws and that the police should follow this up. You know, my view is, had this been said about anybody else in politics, I think this story would have exploded yesterday. As it is, it's taken 24 hours for it to get where it's got to. And that's because actually, you know, in many ways, I've been seen as fair game for a lot of this over the years. But I really did feel yesterday enough was enough. And that's why I said what I said. You know, can you imagine? And I'm not going to name a name. It'd be wrong. But let's say we took somebody prominently on the Remain side of the argument who perhaps had broken their promise to their constituents. And, you know, what if someone said, oh, wouldn't it be funny if you saw them in a pub to throw a pint of lager over them? Even that would be unacceptable. Even that would be unacceptable. But to talk about throwing battery acid, I just think the whole thing was disgusting. It was beyond the pale, irresponsible of the BBC to do what they did. And I thought what was very interesting was that the Prime Minister went on to say in a statement that she wanted the BBC to explain why it was even broadcast. And she did that because, of course, this was a pre-recorded programme. Live on air, as we all know here at LBC, all sorts of things can happen that you'd rather you wish hadn't. But it was a pre-recorded programme. And just to emphasise, the BBC themselves have defended her comments, saying their humour. Jo Brand herself was doorstepped by a couple of news organisations at her home in Dulwich, and she then spoke at a literary festival this afternoon, and basically she hasn't chosen to apologise. So there are a couple of issues here. You know, one is it right the police are investigating? But as a subset to that, you know, the BBC spend £177 million every single year on light entertainment and comedy, paying people like Jo Brand to appear in, you know, bake-off programmes and all sorts of comedy and comment programmes. And I think there are some real questions here, not just about Jo Brand's comments, but about the BBC's editorial line, given, you know, that Danny Baker, and all right, the tweet he put out was really offensive and vile, wrong at every level. But after decades of service with the BBC, he was sacked for that. Whereas I wonder what will happen to Jo Brand. So come on, folks, tell me, you know, is it okay to say this in the line of comedy? Is it fine? 0345 6060 973. Or like me, do you think it was an incitement to violence and it's right, actually, that the police look at this? Text to 84850 and tell me, do you agree freedom of speech does come with responsibility? There are lines beyond which free speech is not acceptable, and I'm arguing that any form of incitement is beyond the realms of free speech. If you agree, disagree, please tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and of course, Facebookers watching us live, you're never short of comments either. Let's go to Philip, who's a first-time caller from Surbiton. Good evening, Philip.
Good evening, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. So the Metropolitan Police have made this statement within the last hour. Are they right to do so?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to say you're definitely not fair game. I don't agree with you with much, but you represent a significant amount of opinion. And considering we were marking D-Day last week and the point about fighting for everyone's right to an opinion, is totally unacceptable from that perspective. I also think that Jo Brand should show more contrition and apologise to you. But there is there's a febrile atmosphere out there, and battery acid is a terrible idea. We just heard Joe's witness, and all of us have got friends and family who live in London or Deliveroo riders, and you know, these are really big dangers at the moment. So that's one point. But I think that, you know, live, well, it wasn't live, I know, but recorded comedy, she's an edgy comedian, and she may occasionally say things that she shouldn't, and there is an editorial responsibility to actually make sure that something like that doesn't go out, and in some ways afford her some protection as well, just like on Have I Got News for You, you know, lawyers and everybody reviews it before it goes out.
Absolutely.
And if you take the Danny Baker situation, it's slightly different, because he wrote the material, he produced it, and he distributed it himself. This is through the BBC, and there should be safeguards. So I think she owes you an apology, but I think the responsibility is really with the editorial and production staff.
Yeah, I mean, that was very much the point the Prime Minister was making too. You know, that actually, how on earth could the BBC have allowed this to go out, given that it was pre-recorded? And I wonder, Philip, you know, perhaps the reason she won't apologise to me is she seems to have this air of moral superiority, that her view of the world is infinitely better and more virtuous than those with a different point of view. And my feeling, and you may agree or disagree with this, Philip, but my feeling is, ever since that referendum, there have been some very prominent Remainers in public life who've given the impression that Leave voters are stupid, thick, ignorant bigots, and that the view of Remainers is superior. And that leads, I think, to a slight breakdown in democratic respect for the other side of an argument.
Well, I think democratic respect is really important on both sides. And if I take my own family, we're completely divided on Brexit, but we're still polite to each other.
Good.
And I think that it's really important that we remember it on all sides. I would imagine that Anna Soubry, for example, might say that she's had some rather unpleasant personal attacks and so on. But I think the sad thing is that we're all part of one country. We have different beliefs, and it doesn't really matter how big the issues are. We should maintain respect for one another. And I think, battery acid is something that shouldn't be joked about. It's terrible. It disfigures people. It changes people's lives for the worse if they're attacked, and that's not acceptable. Can I just say one last thing?
Go on.
I owe you a thank you and an apology.
Right.
We met around about 9 years ago when you very kindly took part in a film for me about Baroness Ashton, and I came to see you in Brussels.
Okay, well, there we are. What a small world.
I was supposed to send you the film, but I didn't. But I thought you'd be pleased to know that it went towards a distinction. So thank you very much.
Oh, well, that's fine. Philip, very good to catch up with you, and thank you very much indeed for your call. Now, disagreement here. It was a joke. Get a life, Nigel. Are you going to check all comedy or only when it's aimed at you? Let me tell you, had this been said about anybody, I would have said it was truly and utterly appalling. And I tell you what, I certainly would not allow anybody in an organisation that I'm responsible for or run to make comments like this. They'd be out on their ear immediately. And I absolutely mean that. Some things are beyond a joke. Throwing battery acid isn't funny in any circumstances. It is, in my opinion, an incitement to violence. If, like the last texter, you think I'm wrong, tell me why. On 0345 6060 973. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. It's 6:15 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Boris Johnson says he's delighted, but there is a long way to go in the Tory leadership contest, despite comfortably winning the first round of votes, which saw 3 candidates eliminated. Police say they're assessing comments made by comedian Joe Brand on a radio show about throwing battery acid at politicians. Vodafone says it could take some time to fix a problem that's left customers unable to access the internet. LBC weather, rain mainly confined to the north and west of England tonight, clearer elsewhere with a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are long delays on the M25 clockwise. A lane stays closed because of an accident after junction 1A for Swanscombe. The queues go all the way over the QE2 bridge to junction 29 for Romford, so it's taking nearly an hour to get through. On the M25 anti-clockwise, there are queues to junction 21A for St Albans. A lane's closed on the exit slip road because the car's broken down. There are queues on roads around Wembley Stadium because of the Spice Girls concert. It's especially slow on the North Circular Road in both directions between Hanger Lane and Staples Corner. And it's looking very slow on roads around Euston Station. Evershot Street remains closed both ways at Euston Road because of a burst water main.
LBC.
Feeling peckish? Introducing the Snack Geolocator Slingshot. Simply pull on your horn, open your window, and wait for the yummy goodness to find your exact location.
Oh dear, the Snack Geolocator Slingshot will never happen. But with a new BP Me Rewards card, getting more of the snacks you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP. Every day. Brighter.
This is LBC.
Bangers and mash. Showers and power ballads. Tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app. With no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
Look at the state of this place. Even the cat's moved out.
Need some indoor inspiration? Get to B&Q. From paint to flooring and everything in between, we've got all you need to get your decor dazzling. And at brilliant prices. You can do it when you B&Q it.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
When you buy the award-winning Alfa Romeo Giulia or the Stelvio Performance SUV, you can pretend it's for the 5-year warranty, the 3 years free servicing, 5 years roadside assistance, or the 5 years 0% APR. But the real reason is, you just want an Alfa Romeo. Start something beautiful. Visit alfaromeo.co.uk.
5 years or 75,000 miles warranty. Minimum 35% customer deposit. 60-month term. HP sales until 30th of June 2019. T's and C's apply. Alfa Romeo Financial Services.
You can complain free to your lender or the Financial Ombudsman about missold PPI. Alternatively, if you haven't got the time or the inclination, then just get the claims guys to manage the claims process for you. With the August 29th deadline approaching, time's at a premium anyway. So if you can't find your paperwork or you're not even sure you have PPI, it's definitely time to make a decision and start your PPI claim before it's too late. Text ANSWER to 66777. Text ANSWER to 66777 now.
The Claims Guys.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Well, the police are going to investigate. The Metropolitan Police say they will look at the comments made by Joe Brand yesterday as a result of complaints that have been made. Not made by me, by the way. I don't know by whom, but multiple people on social media say they have made a complaint about this. There have been no arrests. Inquiries are ongoing. Is this a good use of police resources and time, given how stretched they are in London? And that's a very, very fair point to make. I think my view on it is that something should be said, because I do think incitement to violence is absolutely beyond the pale in every single regard. Matthew in Oswestry says, I voted Remain. I don't like you or your politics, but you're absolutely right in what you're saying about this battery acid issue. Nigel, it was a joke to shock. The police don't have the resources for this. I'm sure there are some that will think that, but I think if a message gets sent that this is unacceptable, I think that personally would be a good thing. On Twitter, I don't think Joe Brand's comments are a police matter, but I do think the BBC and other TV broadcasters should not allow her onto their programmes in future as a result of her crassness and the fact she isn't funny. And if Joe Brand wants to ring in to defend herself and her comments, she can. We'll certainly take her call 0345 6060 973. Now, I did listen last night, late on LBC, to this debate that was beginning to rage over this. And Kevin Maguire from The Mirror came on and was very critical of me. And in fact, there are one or two who've picked up on Kevin Maguire's comments. And it runs like this. And this is a quote from me, and I'll tell you where in a moment. If they don't deliver Brexit, I will don khaki, pick up a rifle and head towards the front lines. Whoever could be... So, were you not inciting violence? Double standards, Nigel. So, I did say that. I said it actually, funny enough, at a private event, an Evening with Nigel Farage event. It was a comedy event, and I meant it, metaphorically. I will go back into battle if they don't deliver Brexit. And whoever you are that sent that, and Kevin Maguire, if you're listening, there is absolutely no parallel to me saying that at a private event and the words I used and what was said, you know, on Radio 4 and Broadcast of a Nation. I would argue there is no parallel whatsoever. Leanne in Loughborough says, I usually find Joe Brand's dry humour funny. However, what she said was really ill thought out, especially with the recent spate of acid attacks. Yeah, and also, Leanne, one of the reasons why for almost the first time ever you've got quite a lot of politicians, even the Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons supporting me, is there has been a change in the atmosphere. You know, there really, really has. I've had this since 2013, you know, a constant threat of attack, but it's now begun to hit politicians on a much wider basis. And so I think there is a general feeling. I've yet to hear anybody who's an elected MP to stand up and defend her. Is it right the police are involved in this? Darius is a first-time caller from Hackney. Good evening, Darius.
Good evening, Nigel.
welcome. So what do you make of it?
Well, first of all, I'd say, look, I don't agree with any type of political violence. So I wasn't, I'm on the left. I'm a Corbyn supporter. I don't believe in, the milkshaking of politicians. It's not necessary, and it's what like you say, in this environment at the moment, it can escalate quite quickly. Having said that, Jo Brand is a comedian, and I don't really think that her comments can be classified as incitement to violence, because it's not a specific threat she's encouraging. If she was saying, to her listeners, I encourage you to go out and attack right-wing politicians.
Darius,
in a certain way,
she said it was her
she said
it was her fantasy, Darius. She's so keen on it. It was her fantasy that it would happen.
Right, but she's a comedian, and we can't go around policing comedy and free speech in that way. If it had been the other way around, people on the left are often accused of being snowflakes. You sound a bit like a snowflake, Nigel.
Darius, I really don't think so at all. And listen, I'm big enough and ugly enough to have had all sorts of things said and written about me. I've been cartooned, I've been lampooned, and mostly, I have to tell you, I find it quite funny. It doesn't worry me in the least. It's part of the territory. But for the sake not just of me, but of common decent debate in this country, I felt something had to be said yesterday. That's why I chose. Normally I ignore all sorts of things that are said, but you say this is the name of comedy. So had she said, oh no, far better to have shot him or stabbed him, would that have been okay as well?
Look, I mean,
I'm asking you. So she was advocating the throwing of acid. Had she said, don't waste a milkshake, just shoot him, would that still have been funny?
Look, but that's you asking whether I find it funny. I don't find the battery acid joke funny.
Well, okay, would it fine?
But I don't think it's a criminal. I don't think it's a criminal offence.
Would it have been acceptable to say stab or shoot? Because it's frankly not very much different.
Again, it's the context. It's the context. It doesn't matter what the tool she references. It's the context in which she's making the joke. If she's actually encouraging people to go out on the streets and attack politicians, then you can make an argument that's incitement. She's saying something in general to be shocking. It wasn't a specific threat, so it's just a waste of police time. But my second point, Nigel, is also about consistency. And I feel that you're making a big deal of this, and the media is picking up on it, because it's a left-wing comedian that said this. Now, there are regular threats.
Are there any other, Darius?
There are regular threats made against Jeremy Corbyn all the time, and I don't see it being picked up in the media. Just this week, or
Darius,
maybe it was last week,
Darius,
the ex-head
you're missing
of the Board
point.
of Deputies said in a speech that Corbyn should be sacrificed.
Darius, you are missing the point here. Politicians are receiving an increased level of threats. It's happening all over the place, all right? Particularly through social media, and it's vile and it's nasty. And one of the problems, Darius, with it is I worry in the future it'll put good quality people off coming into public life. But here's the point. Darius. This was broadcast by the BBC. Everybody in this country with a television in their house is taxed £150 a year to have that TV in their front room. Nearly all the comedians, Darius, on the BBC are left-wing. And if that had been said about Jeremy Corbyn, there'd have been uproar and outrage much more quickly than there was here.
Will you condemn the comments that the Board of Deputies made about saying that Corbyn should be sacrificed?
Of course. I condemn all of these comments, but there is a different point. Darius, this was broadcast on the BBC. This was broadcast on the BBC. Do you not see the difference?
No, there's not really, because you're talking about reach.
Okay. So whether it's said on Twitter to a couple of thousand people, or whether it's broadcast to the nation, and you see no difference.
Well, it's about the number. It's about who it reaches, and often things that are on YouTube or Twitter reach a far greater audience than what's on the BBC. I haven't heard this Jo Brand clip because I don't listen to the BBC often, because I don't agree with lots of their editorial decisions that they make. But I do watch YouTube, and I follow lots of stuff on Twitter, and I saw these comments made against Corbyn. Another, the countdown lady posted a picture on her Twitter feed to 60,000 followers, and said that Corbyn should be taken out.
Yeah, awful.
That is an incitement to violence.
So Darius, what do you see? What do you see? you're not good at listening, Darius. We'll have one more go. What do you see as being the limits to free speech and humour? What are the limits?
Well, I do believe that there should be some limits, and that is specific threats to violence, incitement to violence.
Okay.
And I don't think that Joe Brand's comments...
Okay, all right, Darius, you've made your point. I fundamentally disagree with you, but you have made your point. On Twitter, are you saying it's okay to say what you like privately then, says Mark. Mark, the point I'm making is... I talked about metaphorically going back into battle, no more than that, all right? That is very different to what was said. And actually, Mark, there is a difference, isn't there, in private conversation and what is said and broadcast by the BBC? Of course there are differences there. I defy anyone to say there aren't. Let's go to Oliver, a first-time caller from Fife. Good evening, Oliver.
Pleasure to speak to both of you.
Good. So what do you think of Joe Brand's comments? Are they acceptable, and is it a waste of police time?
Well, I mean, I'm a big sort of advocate for free speech, and it's one of the things I feel most passionate about. But I mean, there's no parallel between what you said and what Joe said. You know, yours was clearly a metaphor. You know, you're not going to go up with a rifle to the Houses of Parliament. There's no comparison. But I mean, I really like Joe, but I mean, what she said, it can't be taken out of context. You know, she was provoking violence, inciting violence, and I think that's where sort of the line is between free speech and then incitement of violence.
Yes, I mean, Oliver, that's my feeling. Listen, I'm for free speech. You know,
Absolutely.
I mean, I really get very upset by the prevailing culture that people are not allowed to have diversity of opinion, that we're all supposed to have a received opinion on whatever the issue is, and I'm all for challenging, pushing the boundaries of argument and debate, and I always have been, and I always will be. But I'm with you. I think there are some things that aren't funny, and secondly, any form of incitement is beyond the acceptable limits of free speech. So, Oliver, you and I are at one on that. We'll talk a little bit in a moment about Boris Johnson's day. He's had a pretty good day. But for now, you're listening to The Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 6:30 and time for the news with Lisa Aziz.
Boris Johnson says he's delighted, but there's a long way to go in the Tory leadership contest, despite comfortably winning the first ballot, which saw 3 candidates eliminated. The former Foreign Secretary received 71 more votes than his nearest rival, Jeremy Hunt. Mark Harper, Andrea Leadsom and Esther McVeigh are now out of the race. The second round takes place on Tuesday. Police are assessing comments made by comedian Joe Brand on a BBC radio programme about throwing battery acid at politicians. Scotland Yard says it follows an allegation of incitement to violence. An inquest has heard a link between 2 of the London Bridge attackers could have been missed because of an administrative error. A senior MI5 officer has told the hearing a request for intelligence from Italian authorities into use of Zagba had not been actioned. He later worked at the same school in East London as the man responsible for planning the attack in June 2017. LBC weather, rain becoming mainly confined to the north and west of England through tonight, with more showers heading into Wales and the south towards dawn. Clearer, though, across Scotland and Northern Ireland with a low of 3 degrees.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7. LBC.
A supposed gag by Joe Brand.
Why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid?
5 years ago, I would be fiercely defending Joe Brand's use of words. Sadly, that all changed 3 years ago with the murder of the Labour MP. We currently live in an extraordinarily disunited kingdom. So at the moment, unfortunately, we have to press pause on these sort of gags. At the moment, when politicians are being hit with milkshake, you have to employ a degree of responsibility.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero, get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
Starting a business is a test of character. Opening a business account shouldn't be. In fact, it should be effortless. With Tide Business Banking, you can open a current account in minutes with no monthly fees, invoicing, accounting integration, and much more. It's why we're trusted by over 70,000 UK businesses. Download the Tide app or search Tide Business Banking today. Subject to terms and conditions, account approval and opening times may vary depending on checks required.
Feeling peckish? Introducing the Snack Geolocator Slingshot. Simply pull on your horn, open your window, and wait for the yummy goodness to find your exact location.
Oh dear, the Snack Geolocator Slingshot will never happen. But with a new BP Me rewards card, getting more of the snacks you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP. Every day. Brighter.
Managed to fill those jobs yet?
Oh, I'm struggling.
You know Mark in HR? He was telling me about Hiring Hub. It connects you to loads of vetted specialist recruitment agencies, so you can widen your candidate search quickly, without any hassle.
Really?
Yeah. You post a job, and recruitment agencies you select send you their best candidates.
Want to fill professional jobs faster? Search Hiring Hub and post your job today.
Mark's nice, isn't he?
Really?
When you buy the award-winning Alfa Romeo Giulia or the Stelvio Performance SUV, you can pretend it's for the 5-year warranty, the 3 years free servicing, 5 years roadside assistance, or the 5 years 0% APR. But the real reason is, you just want an Alfa Romeo. Start something beautiful. Visit alfaromeo.co.uk.
5 years or 75,000 miles warranty. Minimum 35% customer deposit. 60 months term. HP sales until 30th of June 2019. T's and C's apply. Alfa Romeo Financial Services.
Bangers and mash. Showers and power ballads. Tea and toast. Some things just belong together. And if you own a small business, your double act is work you and life you. So at Starling Bank, we mix pleasure with business too. Manage your banking from one beautifully simple app with no monthly fees, instant spending notifications and 24/7 support. Apply in minutes today and say hello to the ultimate work-life bank balance. Just search for Starling Bank, the bank that works like you. Eligibility criteria applies.
The seven dwarves were in a bit of a pickle. With the mines closing down, their finances were somewhat fickle. They looked to downsize their home fast, so Snow White could make her debts a thing of the past.
Boys, the cottage is looking well rough.
So they spoke to the friendly team at Property Rescue, who buy properties in any condition and can offer a guaranteed sale in as little as 2 days, hassle-free. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag #FarageOnLBC.
Let's try some good news, shall we? Aston Martin at its St Athan site in South Wales had already created 200 jobs. We learned today 550 more people to be there, and they're going to be producing the Aston Martin DBX. It'll be in full production by 2020. That's good news and much needed because, of course, we had huge coverage of the Ford engine plant in Bridgend closing not so long ago, and that's going to mean the loss of 1,700 jobs at the end of 2020. So it's not all bad news. Tough times for the car industry. It's not all bad news. Worth pointing out that the boss of Ford said the closure of that plant had nothing to do with Brexit. So let's not be depressed about Brexit the whole time. Now, a big day in the Conservative leadership race, and of course, heading on, who's going to be our next Prime Minister? First it was 13. Then 2 dropped out. Then it was 11. Then it was 10. And now I think it's 7. Theo Usherwood, LBC's political editor. Is that right?
Yes, it is, Nigel. Good evening.
Good
evening. Big day in the Conservative leadership race. Mark Harper, the former Chief Whip, former Immigration Minister, dropping out. He didn't manage to secure enough votes to make it to the second round of the ballot. Esther McVeigh, the former Work and Pension Secretary, she also dropped out. She was actually bottom of the poll with only 10 votes, not reaching the 17 required in order to make it through. And then Andrea Leadsom, the former House of Commons leader, she again failed to meet the requisite number of votes and does not progress through to the next round. The other story, Nigel, of course, was the success of Boris Johnson. I've been speaking to his team this afternoon. They're cock-a-hoop because their man secured 114 votes. Yep. Now, he just needs to keep that level going, that level of support going, and he will make it to the final 2 to go before the membership. And unless he faces Michael Gove, his team are confident that he will become the next Prime Minister.
So the next round of voting is going to be on Tuesday.
Tuesday, yes.
And is it likely over the weekend that some candidates will drop out and coalesce around others?
They could do. Everybody this afternoon and their aides are spinning that they're going to try and force the issue to a vote on Tuesday, that they can pick up momentum. But if you look at the numbers, Nigel, for Sajid Javid, for Matt Hancock, for Rory Stewart, for Dominic Raab, they simply didn't secure enough votes to make it through to the next round. Because on Tuesday, in order to have progressed to the third ballot, each MP needs to have 33 votes in their favour. That's 32 supporters, and then, of course, they will vote for themselves. So going on that basis, only Michael Gove, Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson would make it through this afternoon. Nobody is publicly stating that they would be willing to drop out and see their support go elsewhere.
OK, Theo, thank you very much indeed. Good day for Boris Johnson. Back to the Joe Brand comments of yesterday, ones that I think went way beyond the bounds of acceptable free speech and were certainly not funny. I don't think acid attacks are funny in any way at all. The Metropolitan Police have got involved. They are investigating. Is that the right thing to do given how busy the police are? I think actually it is. I think a marker needs to be put down as to what can and cannot be said in this country. We have got a very, very toxic political environment, and I think that's because people like Joe Brand say the things they say. Now, some with deep prejudice against me disagree. You're a hypocrite, Farage. You've caused division and hate. Don't be a snowflake and shut up. I have never, ever, ever said anything like what Joe Brand has said. Not even approaching what Joe Brand has said. I'd have been put in the Tower of London if I had. I simply haven't done it, and I reject what you say. Annie in Norwich says, when I first heard of this joke about battery acid, I did not immediately think of it being directed at you, but still thought it disgraceful. Oh, well, that's a relief anyway. Molly says, it only took one person to throw a milkshake and then it was followed by others. That's true, actually. What if acid attacks were next? Well, let's try not to even hope that could happen. But Molly, we know actually in the world we're living in, almost anything is possible, and that's the point. Adrian is a new caller from Waterlooville in Hampshire. Good evening to you, Adrian. Hello.
Hello. Well, can I first of all say that I absolutely disagree with throwing anything, milkshakes or anything, on anyone whatsoever, despite how much you disagree with them. Let's get that out of the way. One of my first points is that you seem to think that Joe Brand's comments were referring to you. I think she's more referring to people like Tommy Robinson, who are on the further right. You are.
Adrian, no, I don't.
It's not appropriate to.
No, you're wrong.
They
You're
get
wrong.
covered in battery acid.
No.
I think you're taking it a bit personally. I don't think she was referring to you necessarily. I think she was saying more of the. And Tommy Robinson did stand for your party, didn't he? So,
well, Adrian, I'll tell you why you're wrong. Because actually, you know what she said. She talked about people who'd come to the fore recently, and I don't think, given that Tommy Robinson got less than 2% in the European elections and will probably never stand for public office ever again, you could describe him as having come to the fore. I think we know what she was referring to. I tell you what, Adrian, I tell you what, let's listen to it together and let's see. Just stay there a second.
Okay.
Certain unpleasant characters are being thrown to the fore, and they're very, very easy to hate. And I'm kind of thinking, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid?
So, Adrian, that was it.
Okay, that's satire. And she said immediately after that, which you haven't played, that...
Okay, let's play it. Stay there, Adrian. We're going to play it.
Certain unpleasant characters are being thrown to the fore, and they're very, very easy to hate. And I'm kind of thinking, why bother with a milkshake when you could get some battery acid? That's just me, and it's all right. I'm not going to do it. It's purely a fantasy, but I think milkshakes are pathetic. I honestly do. Sorry.
Okay. So, Adrian, it's actually a fantasy of hers.
She's basically admitting it's a joke. She's not going to do it, and she's not inciting anyone to do it, is she?
So, is a fantasy not something that you want to happen?
Only in Joe Brand's own mind, yes, but she's not inciting other people to have that fantasy, is she? So,
well, she says it's my fantasy. Adrian, I tell you what,
Nigel, you've been on the show. I'm sure you've been on that show before, and you know it's satire, and they say cutting-edge comedy things, and she did almost apologise for it straight away. I think this desire to get her sacked and stuff is just completely out of proportion. It's super outrage.
I think proportion is absolutely key with all of these things. I think she went way beyond the acceptable bounds of humour, Adrian, and certainly way beyond the acceptable bounds of free speech. That's my view.
That's another point, Nigel.
Well, okay, but, listen, we're having a debate on this. I mean, come on, Adrian. Free speech does have its limits, doesn't it?
There's good taste and free speech. Yeah, there's a line. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. There's a line between good taste, but I don't think Joe Brown crossed it then. And, there's lots of other things other people in prominent positions have said, but they get away with it.
All right, okay, Adrian, that's your point of view. I don't agree, but you've made it very, very clear. Jonathan in Essex says, a few years back, Jeremy Clarkson said public sector workers should be shot, and he was made to apologise. Okay, everyone in the audience that laughed are as bad. Isn't it funny, throwing stuff at people, anyone? Well, Jennifer, it's funny. I think sometimes if you're there at a comedy-type event, people laugh automatically and then afterwards think to themselves, gosh, I wish I hadn't laughed. And I'm certain a few people felt like that. Let's go to Merthyr Tydfil and speak to Craig, who's a new caller. Hi, Craig.
Hi, Nigel. How are you?
I am okay. So, am I getting too upset about this? Should I just laugh it off, Craig, when things like this get said?
Absolutely not. At the end of the day, she's a public figure. She used the medium of a public service broadcaster in which to encourage violence, which in itself is a criminal offence.
Yeah, well, that's what I think, and that is exactly what I think. And interestingly, we had Joe Davis on earlier on, the battery acid victim, and he feels that too. So, what should the Met do, Craig, in your view?
Well, I think at the very least they should bring her in for an interview. It needs to be demonstrated that her behaviour is completely unacceptable, because where does it end? We've gone to the stage now where people such as yourselves, I don't agree with Tommy Robinson's politics, but at the same time, he, like everybody else, is entitled to free speech. And for you, for him, for anybody else to be attacked with any objects, be it milkshake, definitely not acid. I mean, that is completely beyond the realms of anything that could even be considered good taste.
I agree.
It's awful. It's not humour. No. It's all satire.
Yes, Craig, I have to say, I can't disagree with you, but we do get people on. Who think it's perfectly acceptable, and they actually think it's funny, but some things are beyond humour. Craig, I thank you for your call and your point. Joe Brand should be investigated by the police. We live in dangerous times. There are too many angry people out there. Freedom of speech should come with responsibility, regardless if you're a comedian or not, says Mary in Ealing, and I agree with that. You're listening to The Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Lisa Aziz.
Boris Johnson says he's delighted, but that there's a long way to go in the Tory leadership contest, despite comfortably winning the first round of votes, which saw 3 candidates eliminated today. Police say they're assessing comments made by the comedian Joe Brand on a radio show about throwing battery acid at politicians. An inquest has heard a link between 2 of the London Bridge attackers could have been missed because of an administrative error. LBC weather, rain mainly confined to the north and west of England tonight, clearer across Scotland and Northern Ireland with a low of 3 degrees.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are long delays on the M25 clockwise from junction 29 for Romford going over the QE2 bridge after an accident at junction 1A for Swanscombe earlier. It's taking around 45 minutes to queue through. It's also slow heading anti-clockwise on the M25. There's a lane closed because a car's broken down at junction 9 for Leatherhead. There are delays on roads around Wembley Stadium. It's because of the Spice Girls concert, so it's looking especially slow on the North Circular Road. It's slow around Euston Station. Eversholt Street remains closed both ways at Euston Road because of a burst water main. And on the Underground, there are severe delays on the Circle Line anti-clockwise.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
A good day for Mr Boris Johnson. He's leading the contest by a country mile. At 9, we'll be interviewing the Home Secretary, Sajid Javid. Yep, you too.
Ian Dale on LBC.
Need to get your chocolate fix like now? Simply press the dashboard chocolate button to zap the chocolate of your choice right into your hand.
A dashboard chocolate button chocolate teleporter will never happen. But with a new BP Me Rewards card, getting more of the treats you love more often will. Search BP Me Rewards to find out more. BP, every day. brighter.
Creative, strategic, healthy. Minds like these make small businesses brilliant. So it's important to support your team in mind and body. Bupa Select Health Insurance takes care of both. It's the most extensive business mental health cover in the market. Bupa. Healthy minds, healthy business. To find out more, search Bupa Business. Based on internally conducted research of the business health insurance market as of March 2019, refers to standard mental health cover when this is included in the product.
Does it matter to you how your money's invested? Think about it. You've got your own values, but do the people who invest your money share them? With a Wealthify stocks and shares ISA, you can put your money into an ethical plan. Just tell us how you want to invest. Are you cautious, adventurous, or somewhere in between? And start your Wealthify ethical ISA today. Easy. For more information, download the app or visit wealthify.com. With investing, capital is at risk and you could get back less than you put in.
At the AA, we're always trying to make your journey better. Our mechanics fix 8 out of 10 cars at the roadside, usually within 30 minutes of arriving. You could say we're simply the best. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong song. Join today from just £4.50 a month. Visit theaa.com. The AA, because anything can happen. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
Cancer doesn't care if you're broke, if the bills are stacking up and you're just too sick to work. Cancer's not fussed if your boiler's on the blink, the mortgage is long overdue, or if your family's finances are in a mess. Cancer does not care about you. But we do. So we help you get a grip on your money, figure out benefits, fill in the right forms, and plan ahead. Whatever cancer throws your way, we're right there with you. Search Macmillan Cancer Support.
Have you ever bought an investment sold by Barclays, Halifax, Lloyds, Santander or any other bank or financial advisor? Investments like stocks and shares ISAs, investment bonds and certain types of pension can be risky. If you lost money with one of these investments, you could be owed thousands of pounds in compensation. Even if you no longer have the investment or the paperwork, here at Goodwin Barrett we can still help. To start your free assessment with Goodwin Barrett, text SOLD to 66777. That's SOLD to 66777.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
The Metropolitan Police are going to investigate Joe Brand's comments that rather than showing milkshakes at certain politicians who've come to the fore recently and whom it's easy to hate, they should throw battery acid. Said she wouldn't do it herself, but it was her fantasy. And I suggest to you that if someone says it's their fantasy, it's what they would like to see happen. But is this a waste of police time, or is this really an issue? Now, Callum from Manchester has sent me an SMS. I almost can't believe it, but this is what he said. People should have the right to say what they want in a free society. This was a joke and clearly a comedian exercising her right for freedom of speech. Free speech does not have limits. Otherwise, you don't believe in freedom at all. Callum from Manchester, that I think is the most irresponsible message I've ever read out on LBC. Please do call us on 0345 6060 973. Of course, free speech has limits, and the key limit is the incitement of violence. I really, really believe that strongly. Was the programme recorded in advance? If so, the BBC should be held responsible. The answer to that I get on Twitter is yes. And it must have gone through all sorts of editorial checks, and the BBC clearly thought it was perfectly acceptable, as indeed they still do today. And that's why the Prime Minister, in her statement, very much focused here on the BBC. It raises, I think, some very big questions about the BBC. David is a first-time caller from Aberdeen. Welcome to the show, David. Welcome to LBC.
Hi, Nigel. I saw the report on the news tonight, with the Prime Minister investigating this. And
Well, commenting and the police investigating, yeah.
Okay. All I really wanted to say on this, Nigel, was, I'm a long-term post-traumatic stress disorder sufferer.
So I'm sorry to hear that.
And basically, when I saw what happened with yourself and the milkshaking and a couple of other people, I sort of automatically knew myself what that would have done to me, and I really felt for you because I thought myself, I didn't see anything funny in that at all.
No.
And so for me, Nigel, I used to laugh at Jo Brand in the past, but I think, she's totally out of order on this. Whether it's Nigel Farage or it's me, Nigel, throwing something over, anybody, and, nobody knows what that is, but, I just think myself, people have just, got the wrong approach on all of this.
No, and David, I'm sick to death of overpaid left-wing BBC comedians, constantly putting out one side of an argument that they believe to be funny. But this has overstepped the mark. David, can I ask, are you a military veteran?
Yeah,
Ex. And have you, just a quick question, have you received the kind of care and follow-up support that you've needed?
It's been pretty good, Nigel, but it's a journey. It's a long journey, Nigel. Something that happens over a course of years, Nigel, doesn't change over a course of hours. So
no, I'm
it's
sure
a journey, and
Well, David,
but,
I wish you well with it. I wish you well with it. And I thank you for calling and making that point. Let's head to Birmingham and speak to Terry, who's another first-time caller. Hi, Terry.
Hello there, hiya. So I hadn't heard the actual recording of what Jo Brand had said, so I was listening to this programme today.
Right.
What we say everywhere has consequences, and if you think of this country where the attacks with battery acid in certain communities has gone through the roof, we've got kids walking around with water pistols with battery acid in, which they're taking people's vehicles and taking people's motorbikes. For her to use such a public forum to say what she said, I find absolutely way beyond what's acceptable. Because if you, like yourself, you had the milkshake thrown over you, in that split second that milkshake hit you, that could have been anything, and the damage that would have caused.
I know.
But you have people very susceptible. So you've got in the news milkshake over you, Jo Brand saying she'd like to throw battery acid over people, and it doesn't matter whether they're politicians or not. It's over anybody. It's unacceptable to do that, and there are people that are open to influence and are open to a narrative that all this is going into their heads, and people are very susceptible and think, well, do you know what? I'm going to go down to my local Halfords, I'm going to get myself some battery acid, I'm going to fill it in a container, I'm going to go to a political meeting, and I'm going to throw it over somebody. And that is unbelievable. I mean, you just can't you just don't understand it at all.
No, it's an horrendous thought, Terry. And I can tell you, Terry, that I've had drinks thrown over me. I've been hit over the head with placards. I've been hit over the head with an egg. I've been attacked time and time and time again physically. So I am actually pretty used to all of this. But I do think we're in a new place. I do think it is becoming actually much more dangerous than it was. And what she said was, at best, irresponsible. Terry, thank you for your point of view. Going up to Scotland to Fife to speak to John, another first-time caller. Welcome, John.
Hi there.
So, the police are going to be involved. I hope they're not going to spend too much time on this, but do you suspect it could be a waste of resources?
Yeah, I do. I think, she's a comedian. I think, whether you think it's tasteless or not is up to you, but I don't think she's broken the law. And I think if you were to investigate her, you'd have to investigate yourself as well.
Go on, what for? Name one thing, John, I've said.
Well, the fact that, you put up you said after Joe Cox's murder on the night of the referendum result that not a shot had been fired. I found that extremely offensive. Someone had died during that referendum.
Well, what I meant, John, was that independence movements normally follow civil wars, all right? And I did apologise immediately because of the context of that. Okay. But that was what I meant. And I apologised immediately, John, for a lack of taste. All right, this woman, when she's asked whether she'll apologise, will not apologise at all, and nor will the BBC. There's quite a big difference there, John, I would suggest.
It's an issue of taste. You apologised. You'd found, you said that you were forced to apologise, but it's not an issue.
I wasn't forced to apologise. I was perfectly happy to apologise.
Well, why? Well, there's other things you've done that you haven't apologised for.
Oh, go on then, John. Name one.
Well, that massive poster of all those, immigrants, which was just.
What do you mean? Do you mean, John, a photograph? A photograph? I can't apologise for the truth, John, can I?
Well, you're playing on people's fears. That was fake,
so should we just erase the truth and pretend it's not happening?
But it wasn't. That's not how it's happening. You're heightening.
John, you name me one thing. You name me one thing that I've ever said in 20 plus years that is either insightful or getting anywhere near what Joe Brand said yesterday. Please.
Well, I think your behaviour speaks for itself.
So this is just pure prejudice from you, John, is it?
No, not at all. I think, the way you've acted and the way you've gradually incited bigotry and fear of foreigners is it's well attested. I don't think.
Well, I have certainly encouraged the spread of a disease called democracy, John. That's what I tried to do. John, thank you. John, I'm going to go. We're out of time. John thinks Joe Brand good, Nigel Farage bad. Well, it takes all sorts. It's a democracy. We live, particularly here at LBC, with free speech, but there are limits to it. I'm going to be back on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. At 10 p.m. tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick. But up next, it's Ian Dale.
Nigel, this will make you laugh. Change UK have decided to change their name again to the Independent Group for Change.
Oh, I reckon it's going to be a rip-roarer.
I suppose it begs the question if the Independent Group will now sue them or change their name to the People's Front of Judea.
Absolutely. Good luck.
Cheers, Nigel. Thank you very much. Now, Boris Johnson got far more votes than anyone expected today. Is it all over bar a bit of shouting? Should the Tories now just row in behind him, crown him and have done with it? Or do you think that it's important there is a proper contest over the next month so both Boris Johnson and the second candidate